All right, I'm gonna push the button right now, give it about 5 seconds and we'll be live.
Okay, we're live. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the continuation of the Sea Pines Community Services Associates Inc. Board of Directors meeting of Tuesday, September 27th. The board started earlier and went immediately into executive session to discuss contracts, legal, and personnel matters. We are now back in public session, open session. I would like to tell you briefly that the board discussed the case of Jill Jinks individually and as trustee of the Jinks Heritage Trust against versus the Sea Pines Resort Community Services Association Inc. and the Association of Sea Pines Plantation Property Owners Inc. and the Advisory Board. In that case, as I had reported earlier, District Judge Court Norton, District Judge Norton of the District Court, Federal District Court, issued a decision roughly a month ago in which he determined that CSA, despite our good faith efforts and legal advice to the contrary, did not have the authority to call the referendum, but then determined that based on the overwhelming vote of, in the referendum itself, that the community had ratified our actions and we were authorized to collect the assessment and move forward. Ms. Jinks has filed a notice of appeal of that order as the plaintiff in the case. And so we are now in the appeals process. During the executive session, the board authorized our counsel to file a counter notice of appeal in which we will appeal that part of the judge's order that found that we did not have the authority to call the referendum. The process is lengthy, and we would anticipate if the parties move forward with their notice of appeal and counter notice of appeal, cross notice of appeal, that we would have activity over the next 6 months in pleadings, followed by hopefully a decision of the court by the end of the year. Also in executive session, the board authorized the staff to start billing and collecting the $600 critical infrastructure assessment as authorized by Judge Norton in his order, based on what is in the best interest of the community. And we will do so, and Victoria Shanahan will discuss the timing of that during her discussion of the meeting. So that's what happened during the executive session. With that, I'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is to ratify the approval of the Sea Pines CSA Board of Directors meeting minutes of May 19, 2022, and the Sea Pines CSA membership annual meeting minutes of May 3rd, 2022. Those have been circulated to the board, and we were ratified by, were approved by email. Is there any further discussion on either of those sets of minutes? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to approve those minutes. So moved. Mr. Borghese, seconded by Mr. Johnson. All in favor, please raise your hands. Those are approved. Oh, Mr. Corbett, as secretary, just reminded me that we do have a quorum. Thank you. Thanks, Drew. Next item is the chair's remarks. When I became chairman almost now 2 3/4 years ago, it was following the earlier failed referendum, and my primary focus was threefold. One is to work closely with our new president, Sam Bennett, who was coming on board in February, to develop a leadership structure that would work for the community. 2 was to work to find the resources necessary to fund what the critical infrastructure that was by this point now clearly failing and needed to be fixed, and which the prior referendum had come close to providing funding for. And 3rd was to work to make sure that the community at large was comfortable with the communications process that was being maintained over the course of the year, in terms of what we were doing and what our needs were, and we've done that through our monthly letters and through the weekly notices from CSA. In terms of the infrastructure operation, we spent a lot of time on the revenue task force. We were also hit with COVID, and so for 4 months tried to figure out how to run an operation that was with a national and international pandemic, which I'm thrilled we got through as well as we did. And finally, we were able to solve the critical infrastructure funding with the referendum, which was overwhelmingly supported by the community. We've heard the numbers too many times for me to repeat. So we got that part of my goals taken care of. Over the course of the 2.5 years, however, the other side of the house, not the capital side, the critical capital side, but the operation side, has clearly been recognized to be underfunded, and our assessments with the limitations that we have on increasing those simply we're not and unlikely to be covering the necessary operations. Not only the operations as they exist today, but the need to expand them as the demographics of our community, which even when I took over as chairman, were still relatively not full. But over the course of the impact of COVID and the additional short-term rentals that we continue to see as a growing business in Sea-Pine, we needed to have additional resources available to us. And so over the last year, we've worked with a revenue task force to increase those revenues. And we will continue to look at additional revenue sources. It doesn't take much to read the news to see that within the nation, we have an unusual inflation on salaries, and within Hubert County, between the lack of workforce housing and the enormous impact on shortage of workers, the CSA's needs to increase its salary structure dramatically has caused even additional shortfalls. So you will continue to hear us talking about additional revenue sources that are needed to meet the needs of Sea-Pines. I'm extremely happy when I get letters of support for the things we're doing. Obviously, we're not going to please everyone all the time, but I think that the amazing work that the staff has done to improve Sea-Pines and the critical infrastructure, not only in terms of the roads that were being built, but if you've been driving around Sea-Pines on any given day, you'll see our crews digging out trenches, putting in new pipes where they along the roads where they've broken. We had one of the most amazing Julys of rainfall. I think we figured out somewhere between 10 and 14 inches. And you saw the impact that rain can have, that kind of rainfall can have on our neighborhoods where streets were flooded, where neighbors' yards were flooded. And that's the kind of thing that we've done over the last several years of ditch clearing and pipe, and we have a lot more to do. So the work is started. I'm thrilled that we've got started getting the revenue, additional revenue in, and we will continue to find ways to do that. But our needs are not stopping. And so I expect that over the next several years, the board and staff will continue to work to make sure that we have enough revenue to keep Sea-Pines on a fully occupied basis as it is today, as the premier community of Hillhead. With that, I'll turn it over to Sam for your remarks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, I'll keep them short and have more to say during the director's reports. The biggest thing I think on everyone's mind, at least around here right now, is Hurricane Ian, which is churning into the Gulf.
Hey, Larry, you want to move the camera? So
Sorry.
we can see.
Thank you. Good. There it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Which is churning in the Gulf. For the latest track, it looks like it's going to be a significant rainmaker for this community. There may be some increased tides associated with it, and we expect to have a lot of water on this community over the next 72 hours. So in preparation for that, you will see the lagoons going down dramatically. Those areas that we have the ability to control lagoon levels, we are moving water out of lagoons. They may be bare for a while, but I think the rain's going to fill them up. We've got everybody out checking and clearing pipes again, clearing intakes, and making sure that the outfalls are as clear as they can be. We'll be staging additional pumps at certain outfall areas where we don't get enough flow. So when we're working against the tide, you'll see additional mechanical pumps in the Banner Creek area, and possibly somewhere some in the club course area. And we've got our jetters and our Vactron trucks on standby to remove debris as it accumulates. When we get this much water, the organic material begins to float, and it unfortunately, it begins to tie the pipes right back up and the intakes back up. So our crews will be out doing that. As long as it's safe, they'll be out there doing it during the storm, clearing as necessary. We've got all our equipment ready to go. We will be keeping employees on site 24 hours until the storm passes. We've established some temporary housing for folks, and they will be working throughout the nights to make sure that things are as open as they can be and that our pumps keep working. And then we retasked our maintenance contractor. I think the board's aware that we have a great maintenance contractor in Brightview Landscaping, and they are those folks are going to moving away from doing regular maintenance starting this afternoon, and they will be supporting our employees in terms of clearing ditches and intakes and looking for opportunities and challenges in the stormwater system that need to be cleared. And then finally, we've got our tree contractors on standby. The other challenge I think we're going to have is this could potentially turn into a wind event as well. We'll know more 24 hours from now about what our winds are going to look like. The greatest challenge we have right now is the groundwater table is still pretty high. We've had it's been fairly dry since the big rains in July and August, but the groundwater table is high, and once the ground gets saturated, as everyone knows, and the winds start blowing, that's when we start losing trees. So we'll have all our tree contractors on standby to help us clear roads should we have trees coming across the roads. We've had such situations really over in the last couple of weeks. We've seen trees, large oak trees coming across roads that we wouldn't have expected, but the ground has been so saturated and the wind just does it. So we're hoping for the best. We're doing our best to prepare for the worst, and we'll see where we are this time next week.
Thank you, Sam. I should note that I had actually asked Sam before Ian came on the scene to explain to the community just how we get water out of this community. It's fascinating for those who just assume it goes away, that it doesn't. There's a substantial process involved in. Sam mentioned the number of pumps that we are putting out in the community that are temporary to move water, but even on a regular rainfall day, a lot of water moves out from sea pines into the bay. And if you happen to read, I think it was the island package today, they even mentioned among the places that are likely to have the greatest flooding is sea pines and the south end. We're the lowest part of the island. And so I applaud the work that Sam's done and with his staff to get ready. And I'm just hopeful that all that work I'd like to see it be not needed at all, but if it is, I'm sure it'll work out successfully. So thank you, Sam, for that report.
Thank you.
Did you want to move on to the director's report?
Yes, let's do that.
Larry,
I'm sorry, questions?
Larry, I just, as a board member, I've been on a few years. I can't tell you how pleased and grateful I am that we have somebody like Sam and his team doing this level of preparation. I never heard that kind of a report before. And I think it underscores your opening comments about not only do we need for our own personal safety and ability to move about the community, but also the value of our property, these infrastructure investments and these investments that we need to make in operations. If the case is not evident from what Sam just said, it's just pretty remarkable that we've got this team in place, but we need to fund them.
Thank you, Jim. Any other questions before we go on? Thank you, Caroline. Any other questions from the board? If not, we'll move on then to capital projects and community development. Russell Fredericks.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Mr. President. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
sir.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to update the community this morning. The last few months have been incredibly busy in our capital projects. As we all know, we've been working on North Sea Pines Drive from Ocean Gate to Lighthouse Road. There's still some finishing touches that we have been working on, which include the permanent line striping and the roadway reflective markers have been recently installed. We do have some finishing touches to make in proximity to Whistling Swan and Red Cardinal on the North Sea Pines Drive roadway itself. Our crews or contractors have been working on the Red Cardinal drainage. Starting at beach marker 39, we're making our way into the roadway as we speak, but Mother Nature has other plans in mind, so we are pulling up stakes for the next few days and leaving off in a good place. I did want to take a moment to share with the community. Many of you probably have seen this in previous discussions, but this is kind of what we're dealing with out there. And if everyone can kind of see this, this is a piece of corrugated metal pipe that we removed out of Beach Walk 39. And, you know, it's really speaks to this conversation that's taking place, and the 30 some odd miles of pipe that's in Sea Pines is greatly deteriorated. We're making substantial inroads to replace that, but keeping our eye on the prize at all times. We're working on these drainage projects, making sure that we remove all this deteriorated pipe in proximity to these roadways that we're working in is one of our prime goals. So just wanted to share that this morning. Moving on to the other aspects of North Sea Pines Drive, phase 3, the Ocean Gate to Lighthouse was phase 2. Phase 3 will be from North Sea Pines Drive and Lighthouse Road to the Baynard Cove Road intersection. Improvements in this stretch of road will include roadway alignment along with the leisure trail widening that will take place. One of the other prime aspects of the project includes the replacement of a timber bridge that's located at beach marker 24 that crosses over the lagoon at the leisure trail crossing there, which is probably one of the most heavily used locations or crossings that we have in Sea Pines for beach access. So that's on our docket. Also included is replacing the drainage in Snowy Egret Road, resurfacing that, as well as Wagon Road. The drainage in these areas has been failing for some time, as we've heard in many updates. So that's in our queue for this fall. We're again currently working in Right Cardinal. We'll be moving into Snowy Egret Road in probably the next 4 to 6 weeks, weather permitting. Hopefully we have no further weather events that are going to hold us up. As the off season is prime time for these projects, any lost days do compound and do add up over that time frame for the project. Other things that we've been working on is the Beach Lagoon Timber Bridge, which is the first timber bridge if you're driving into Beach Lagoon at equal with 30 beach marker 35A. We are in the final phases of that project, and it will be wrapped up here by end of day tomorrow. But that's our contractor has done a great job there. Much improved over the previous timber bridge that was present for probably since the early 1970s, the best we could date it back to. So again, these investments that we're making in these projects are long-term investments, and our contractor did a great job with the construction of that. A couple other projects to note that we did complete earlier in the season. The Spartina Bridge, we replaced the railings there, which was in the Calabogie club area of the community, if you're not familiar with it. Also, the Red Maple Road drainage, we had a substantial failure on Red Maple Road. Was probably some of the original piping in Sea Pines from the late 1950s. We replaced that. Also, we've been this season, we've spent a lot of time working our beach access points, as we've all talked about. The beach access locations or walkways are some of the prized amenities for Sea Pines residents. So we worked on several of those this season. The highlight of that was a new beach walk to beach marker number 4, which is in South Beach, right off of Sea Pines Drive. So again, these are a few of the highlights of what we've been working on this season. Glad to take any questions this morning on our capital projects before I move on to a very brief update for our land use management. Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Well, first, let me thank you for all you and your team do. You've made significant improvements. With the impending effects coming from this hurricane, do you have a comfort level with our existing drainage in its current condition, that it can perform properly to keep us from flooding throughout the Sea Pines? And I understand we couldn't take a direct hit from a major hurricane right now, but with our current conditions and what you've been able to do to date, can you give us an assessment of our ability to drain the community?
Sam, if you could hear me, I don't know if you want to partially take that
Yeah.
question.
I'll do my best to answer that with Russell's help, and Jared may need to step in. At the end of the day, what matters for us when it comes to water is where can it go? And if you think about where it goes, it ends up in the Calabogie Sound. So every drop of water that comes up, that rains in sea pines, ends up in the sound in some way, shape, or form through our stormwater system. And so those areas that we've been able to make improvements upon, North Sea Pines Drive being one of them, to get the water to the lagoon system, and then the Lawton Canal and pumped out. Those areas will probably fare better with the high water we think we're going to have. In those areas, we haven't been able to make drainage improvements, quite honestly. So the key for us is going to be, for this community with this storm, is in any storm at the end of the day, is how high is the water in Calabogie Sound, and what does that look like for us to move the water out of it? Unfortunately, my concern right now is it looks like we're going to be between 7.5 and 8 foot tides, which is on the upper end of the tides that we have here in Sea Pines. And if that water begins to stack up and those tides they can't relieve themselves and come in and out as they normally do because of the wind and the water stacking up against itself, then it's going to be a challenge to get the water out of the lagoons unless we can mechanically move it out, which is what we can do at the Lawton Canal pump station with the big pumps there. But we don't have those resources permanently in place in other areas. And so that's why we'll be staging pumps in other areas to help see if we can move some of that water out in ways that we haven't been able to in the recent past. So Bill, that's not a great answer to your question, but it really depends on where the levels end up in Calabogie Sound and how much, whether it's 4 inches, 5 inches, or 10 inches. It could be all the above now. But clearly the areas that we've been able to do the majority of the maintenance work, and we really tried to spread the ditch cleaning and the pipe cleaning out across the community. They're going to fare better until we reach a point where there's nowhere for the water to go. And then it's just going to pile up in the ditches because we can't get at the end of the sound because the tide is too high.
And let's remind ourselves, or let's not lose sight of the fact that this critical infrastructure has been on the board's agenda for years. David Borghese, I think you could probably say from when you started as a board member the first time, in terms of the amount of time that we've tried to find solutions. Thanks to the critical infrastructure referendum and this board's determination to get started one way or the other, we've got at least one major project done, but it's a slow process. Remember, we built out in our projections 10 years, and we're really only 2 years into it. So Sam, I'm sure there are places along North Sea Pines Drive that will now not flood as badly as they used to, and they're very thankful for that. But there's going to be places where the best we've done is ditch cleaning and that kind of work, which helps dramatically. I know on Governor's Road where we live, you can actually now see the ditches, which even a year ago, none of us knew they even existed. It just flowed. So as a community, we can be thankful that we finally bit the bullet and the community passed the referendum and started the funding, and that's great. But it's a long-term project that was put aside for a long time by the community itself and the votes. And so with the support of the community, we're going to do the best we can as quickly as we can. And Russell, I do want to congratulate you on the work that's done on Sea Pines Drive. Every email I get about it at my chairman's letter is congratulatory and very praiseworthy, not only the roads and the road structures, but the leisure paths. And we've been able to widen those for bikers and walkers. So great job on that project. And we're just going to hold you to the same high standard on phases 2, 3, and 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that very much. Yeah, to echo Sam's comments and go back to the original that Bill had asked, obviously with the drainage work that we've been doing is going to help, but it really depends on that intensity of that rainfall. If we get a couple inches of rain in a matter of half hour or an hour, those are game-changing events, and getting that amount of water out of the community or getting it to drain off is a significant challenge. But one that Jared's team and will be prepared for. So again, thank you for your remarks. I do want to conclude this morning. If there's any other questions on capital projects, glad to take those now. Otherwise, I'll just quickly finish the lumber report so we could.
Yeah,
move on.
let's move on to lawn blaze.
Okay, thank you very much. And just, I'll keep this brief. Our land use monitor, Ryan Cash, has had a busy summer out there. We're going into the last quarter of the season. As we all know, the summer has been incredibly busy with rental guests and so forth. We've had approximately 450 some odd violations throughout the season, mostly in landscaping, unsightly items, and trash. This last quarter really saw about 200 of those violations that Ryan's been dealing with, particularly unsightly. Obviously, the beach towels and things like that. We have seen some improper parking as it relates to the short-term rental parking policy. We have been dealing with that throughout the summer as well. But again, most of the violations have kind of fallen into the category with the or the rent generated by that short-term rental guest in Sea Pines. That's my report. Aside from the one other aspect of, we are working to recruit some additional LUM department staff, additional land use monitor, and that obviously recruitment is challenging these days, but we're working to we're efforting to bring that staff on board so we could have additional eyes out there in the field and dealing with these concerns that come in from property owners on a daily basis. So that does conclude everything I have to report this morning. So thank you for your time, and Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for Russell on land use management? Seeing none, thank you, Russell. Thanks for the great work. Amanda,
Thank you, sir.
communications.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, other board members that are joining us today. And hello to those who are viewing the meeting via the live stream on YouTube, and those that might come back to watch this video at a later date. Just a couple of questions, just a couple of reminders. If you have a question for the board, please send that to questions@csacpines.com. We will receive those through the meeting adjournment. So please get those in if you might have a question that the board will address for you. Sam covered this a little earlier, but our website has an updated page for Hurricane Ian information. If you're interested, that is seapinesliving.com/Ian. We will continue certainly to keep you updated as we move through the week related to that weather event that the team's already reported on. A few other items. CSA is in our board of director elections process at the moment. We have 3 seats open for our Class A board of directors for our residential board, and then 1 Class B spot open for the commercial director board seat. Those are available opening up on January 1st, 2023. Similar to last year, we'll be working with votenow.com. They will be assisting in not only our online operations, but also our mailed voting operations for our election. Just real quick, if you didn't already see it on our website in our email communications, our Class A candidates for the board are as follows: David Ellis, Leanne Leahy, Ted Levitt, David Pardue, and Bob Quinn. Those are our Class A candidates. For Class B, we have, which is our commercial candidate, Mark King. Our date of record for our elections is October 1st. That is this coming Saturday. So if you have information that you need to update with CSA, something like your email address, primary mailing address, please do so. You can reach out to us at info@csacpines.com to update that information, or you can do so on our website, seapinesliving.com/request. A couple other important dates for our elections. October 18th is our Meet the Candidate live stream event that will be broadcast on our website at seapinesliving.com/live. So we hope you can all attend that live stream meeting. Ballots, both mailed and online, will be sent to the primary property owner on November 1st, and they will be due back by December the 1st. Elections information is also posted on our website, seapinesliving.com/elections.
Amanda?
Yes, Jen?
Yeah, I think we should emphasize, as the governance committee talked about the electronic voting, which has been very successful, but also the paper, there's been some comments, is that belt and suspenders or duplicative. And I think it reflects the demographic of the community's desire that we give both options, even though it does add some expense, both options as we transition over time to get everybody's email addresses updated and that. So we wish we could be fully electronic, but I don't think our community is yet ready to convert to fully. So this is in response to quote the market, not just the desire to have electronics.
Absolutely. Thank you for those comments, Jim. Absolutely. So a couple of other quick reminders. Our committee applications are also available on our website. Those are due back to CSA by December the 1st. If you're interested, feel free to fill out an application. Those are available on our website, cpinesliving.com/committee application. And then moving into a few of our committee updates, specifically for the Strategic Planning Committee. The Strategic Planning Committee met this past month, continuing discussions on this current strategic plan, and this discussed the direction of the potential for a next strategic plan going forward. We will meet again next month to continue those discussions and are hopeful that the committee will reach an agreement to finalize a suggestion to the board to facilitate a more inclusive community plan. So certainly looking forward to that meeting in October. The Governance Committee, they also met this month on the 6th. The committee continued discussions on a new draft, a new vision and mission statement, and discussion on those items will continue at their October meeting. At the September meeting, they also discussed and will be bringing forth to the board today the consideration of a resolution that will allow for more efficient and timely posting of committee meeting minutes. Currently, there's a requirement in terms of circulating and approving that all committee members must respond before the meeting minutes can be posted on the Sea Pines Living website. The new recommendation will allow for the posting of meeting minutes with the approval of a simple majority of the committee members. Chair Caskey from that committee will discuss the resolution during his remarks later in the meeting. In closing, if we can be of any assistance, please reach out to the communications department. We're available by email at info@csacpines.com, the staff, Monday through Friday, by phone or in person, 7:30 to 4:30 p.m. at our office at 175 Greenwood Drive, or by phone at 843-671-1343. That's my updates. Larry, happy to take any questions from the board at this time.
Any questions for Amanda? Seeing none, thank you, Amanda, very much for the excellent report. I'll turn it over to Ms. Shanahan for the Finance Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I want to start off by congratulating one of my staff members, Myla Mitchell. She's been with us since June of 2021, and she's just recently been promoted to controller. So we're really excited about that. So in the future, if you have any financial questions, you can call Myla and not me. So I'm just kidding. Finally, what we're working on right now, we're really deep into the 2023 budget. I'm working with both Sam and Mr. Borghese on that going forward. We will have something for you at the next meeting. It's kind of unfortunate, but we filed 13 liens on property owners for failure to pay their annual assessments. I want to keep the board updated that there are still some property owners out there that are not current. As Larry mentioned earlier, we are planning to go ahead with the additional $600 in assessment. And I expect that to go out in the next couple of weeks, and it will be due 45 days from the date of the invoice. I don't have an exact date of invoice, but it will be, expect something in the next coming week. Then the 2023 assessment, which would be your regular assessment and an additional 600, and they're both subject to CPI. Those will go out in December, we hope around the middle of December. And as you know, they're usually due the first couple weeks in January. But it's been determined, just to give a little relief to the property owners, that those assessments will not be due until April 1st, 2023, to give you an additional 60+ days to remit that payment. And we are also working on preparation for invoicing and collection of the rental registration fee. We expect those invoices even though it's effective January 1, we expect those invoices to be going out in the spring of 2023. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize two things that Victoria just mentioned. On the critical infrastructure, again, because we want to be, we don't want to unduly burden, although I hope the entire community has anticipated paying that once the appeal was, the litigation was completed, as we fully anticipated being successful in being able to collect it. We are going to bill that fairly quickly for 2022, which would have normally been done back in January or December 2021, due in January. But to give some relief so that we don't overlap too closely, the bills that go out in December for both the regular assessment and the critical infrastructure assessment will have a due date of April, I think we said.
April 1.
April
1st,
1.
yes.
We'd be happy to have the money sooner. You know, feel free to pay, if you want to pay it this year, to get it for some reason, fine. If you want to pay it in January, February, we're happy to have it, but it will not be due until April. And then the penalties won't start until thereafter. So that's one set of money. The second amount is the rental registration fee for anyone who rents their property, short-term or long-term, 1 day or 6 months, starting January 1. So if you have a rental in January, February, March, or April, you will be subject to that fee and anytime thereafter. But in order to give some relief to our accounting department and also to those renters who will be paying the other fees, those monies will not be due. They won't be billed until later in the year and due later in the year. But the fee will be applied starting if you start renting earlier. Our team is watching market the newspapers and marketing sites to see who's renting and what they're renting for. And you will be billed based on your rental activity in those first 4 months, even though the bill doesn't go out later. So we don't want any surprises in that regard.
I just have one more comment on the assessment for 2023 with the extended due date, but we will be accepting payment plans for that. And they just, your application for the payment plan must be submitted prior to April 1st.
And remember, those are CPI adjusted. So we all know that inflation has been substantial. So you can anticipate instead of close to 1,800, the total will probably be closer to $1,900.
Correct.
We'll give you exact figures once we have them. Any questions then on finance? Seeing none, we'll move on to Jared Mays and maintenance and facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I'm just gonna go over a couple of the maintenance divisions real quick. As far as tree care, this season we performed roadside trimming on all of the streets off Sea Pines Drive. It was totaling over 37 streets. And we're going to continue to go through secondary and tertiary streets in systematic order. All leisure trails and beach walks were trimmed this year, and we're going to begin this cycle again in January just to keep them on a yearly maintenance routine. I also did want to note, as Sam mentioned, our CSA staff has responded to several downed trees blocking the roadways from the recent storms. Just between the wind and the rain we've received, we definitely had some obstructions from trees. Our roadside division, we've been filling the edge of the roadside with milling in areas and plan to continue throughout the fall. Depending on what the storm does, we're going to plan to start mulching roadsides in the middle of next month. Leisure trail repairs, the Rice Dyke Trail has been resurfaced with some stone in the forest preserve. We did several locations on South Sea Pines Drive, and then near the front gate at the turnaround area. Roadway repairs, Greenwood Lane, Governor's Road, Greenwood Drive, Loblolly, Gull Point, Isle of Pine, just to name a few. I did want to touch on the rainfall updates. So I did a little research. The average rainfall for Hilton Head in July is 6.31 inches. We received 9.82 inches. Average for August is 7.63, and we received 12.83. And the average for September is 5.82, and we received 9.11 inches of rain. And we have a couple days left in the month. And I did want to note in September, we had 2 very significant rain events. September 2nd alone, we received 3.42 inches. And September 9th, we received 4.66 inches. So the 3-month average for rainfall should be 19.76 inches. And our 3-month actual was 31.76 inches, which put us 12 inches over the average for the last 3 months. So as Sam mentioned, we have definitely seen a lot of rainfall this season. Moving forward from that, our lagoon maintenance, we are treating for aquatic vegetation in lagoons. I did want to note that we do not spray when there's inclement weather, as it dilutes the product, making it ineffective. So with all the rain we've received in August and September, we are playing catch up in some areas. We are aware of them, but again, we don't want to spray if it's not going to be effective. Stormwater maintenance and repairs. We've cleaned several ditches throughout the community. As Larry mentioned, in Governor's Road, we did that. Pine Island area, Otter Road. We've cleaned out some pipe ends at lagoon edges in Baynard Cove, Tupelo, Lawton Road, Stony Creek, St. Andrews, and Heritage, just to name a few. Roadside pipe ends we've done on Governor's Road, Heritage Court, Heritage Road. We've made some stormwater repairs in several locations. We did a pipe repair on Sand Fiddler, Heritage Road, catch basin repair on Wildwood, Water Oak, Ready Turnstone, and line jetting we've done throughout the community. Otter Road, Club Course, Governor's Road, Heritage Road, Murfield, just to name a few again. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any questions at the moment.
Jared, thank you. I know I've seen crews out an awful lot, and given the amount of rain, it's hard to stay up, but at least we've now seen the water moving, even if it's moving slowly. So any questions for Jared? Seeing none, Jared, thank you. We'll move on to Mr. Henderson, Operations and Special Projects.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I'd just like to cover a few forest preserve updates for you. Due to a lack of participation in not Hurricane Ian, but due to a lack of participation, the yard sale, which was scheduled for this coming Saturday, October 1st, has been canceled. If you did make application and payment for the yard sale, unless you have been directly contacted by me, you should come to the CSA, to the receptionist during our operating hours, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4:30, in which you can claim your payment and your application. If that does not work for you, please feel free to contact me directly, and we'll be happy to mail it to you. Sea Pines Forest Preserve Foundation is going to be mailing its annual solicitation letter out in the next couple weeks. So I ask as we enter this giving season to please consider supporting our natural treasure, for we do rely heavily on community support to maintain and enhance this unique Sea Pines resource. Our signature event, the bonfire, is coming up, so it's a save the date at this point. It will be on Friday, November 11th from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. at Fish Island. The Salty Dog has graciously again agreed to donate all of the food for the event. I have been working with them on the menu and can tell you that it is set up to be the best yet. So please consider joining us Friday, November 11th for the bonfire. And then lastly, I'd just like to give you a heads up that we have completely redone all of the interpretive signage with accompanying videos for the shell ring. This work was made possible by a grant from the town of Hilton Head's Accommodations Tax Program. We utilized all the latest information from archaeological work that was done at the ring by Binghamton University on a seasonal basis from 2015 to 2019. We have learned so much as a result of that work. It is a fascinating story. We hope to release this information. It will be on site at the ring, but also available digitally. Each sign has its own video that accompanies it. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's a fascinating story. The Shell Ring Foundation was originally put down almost 5,000 years ago. And it wasn't until about 4,000 years ago that the main occupation and the building of the ring occurred. It was occupied for a few hundred years, and then for some reason, presumably changing sea levels, rising sea levels, the ring was abandoned. And it wasn't until about 3,500 years ago that the native peoples came back to the ring once sea levels had gone back down. But interesting enough, they did not add to the ring. They did not live at or near the ring. But what they did do is they cremated their dead. There have been a series of occupations as sea levels ebbed and flowed during that time. And as recently as 500 years ago, native peoples were visiting the ring. And interesting enough, spending a lot of time in the very center of the plaza, the very center of the ring, to create stone tools. So just a little bit of what you can look forward to, but it is a fascinating story, and we will be getting that out to the community towards the end of the year. That completes my report. I'll be happy to take any questions any of you may have.
Dave Borghese.
When will tickets for the bonfire go on sale?
I don't have a specific date. We'll work with Amanda on getting that out very soon, Dave. We will once again do it via Eventbrite, so you'll be able to do it electronically and pay with a credit card if you would like to do that. So I don't have a date, but it will be releasing that very soon.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, David. We'll turn to Toby for safety, security, and transportation.
Good morning, everyone. As Sam has already previously mentioned in his opening remarks, we are here making the necessary preparations for the storm. We ask that everyone please keep an eye on the local weather channel for the most up-to-date information. I have been contacted by the town of Hilton Head and the county, and it's asked us to please encourage our citizens to stay off the roadway once the storm approaches our area. Please make all your necessary grocery, gas, medication runs prior to the storm. As Stan mentioned, we do expect heavy rainfall. And last thing we need is people out riding around the roadways in the height of the storm. You can reach out to us at our website at csaliving.com to get the contact information for the town of Hilton Head or the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office. Information and how to go about contacting them. We also have listed on this site the contact numbers for Palmetto Electric and the water department if that becomes necessary for you to make those calls. Moving on to our calls for service. With the implementation of our CSA 360, we are able to streamline our calls for service. Since our last meeting in May, we've had a roughly about 3,800 calls for service since May. Primarily, I'd like just to highlight a couple of those. We have had 4 burglaries reported, home residential burglaries reported since May. One of those cases resulted in us being contacted by the Georgia authorities where 3 individuals were arrested. Inside of that vehicle, there were items stolen from a home here in Sea Pines. It turned out it was a rental guest. It was in this home was located in the Beach Lagoon area. But what we found out is that the suspects that were arrested in this case had in their possession a Sea Pines property owner guest pass, where one of the individuals we believe that was involved in this was using the passcode of a property owner to call passes in for themselves. So I'll state this again. Please keep your passcode confidential. It is only for the property owners only. And as you can see in this case, it was used for something other than coming and have evening cocktails. We've had 38 motor vehicle collisions. We've also had 19 car break-ins since May. The car break-ins are continuing to occur. None have been forcibly entered. All of those vehicles were left unsecure. We've had 220 covenant violations, 238 gate runners, 177 activated alarms, 156 911 calls in to the Beaufort County emergency contact number, 186 wildlife calls. I would like to mention we do currently have a wildlife officer on staff But with the limited security staff that we have right now, we're not able to perform all the functions that we would like to. Dealing with our animals, we do have some trappings that we're trying to do on a kind of a short-term basis, but we're kind of limited right now in some of those areas. We've conducted 107 traffic stops. Of those traffic stops, 26 were resulted in an actual state ticket. 21 were for warnings were issued. We've had 195 reported parking incidents. Majority of those were during our summertime involving rental guests. We've had 46 property damage cases reported here, one recently that also resulted in an arrest as well. Just some interesting facts, and then to include something that I'd like to mention. We've had 10 domestic disputes that we responded to since May. Half of those cases resulted in arrest here in Sea Pines involving people that were here visiting. I've asked the staff starting in June to kind of, as the day goes on at our gates, to record the number of cars that we turn around both at the Greenwood gate and at the Ocean gate. Since the 1st of June at both gates, we have turned around 20,286 cars, which averages about 160 cars a day. So people ask, what do all these people turn around? Well, it's on the average of about 160 cars a day that we're actually turning around. Just wanted to throw that information out there to you. Moving on to our trolley, we had not much of an active trolley season. I am using comparison numbers for 2019 because that was really prior COVID, when we really, the trolleys were in full swing with what we considered a full population of riders. In 2019, for the trolley season, we moved 77,000 people during that I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong number. In 2019, we moved 92,000 people during our regular trolley season. This past season that we ended in September the 1st, we moved 46,860. So it's 21,000 less riders in comparison to our 2019. Our biggest route was our blue route, which runs from Harbortown to the Beach Club. There was 21,000 riders there. It was down 13,000 riders compared to 2019. Our beach trolley, which we consider our yellow route that runs from Lot 8 to the Beach Club, was down 3,500 riders compared to 2019. We only moved 11,000 people this year from our beach shuttle lot. So it was a fairly slow season. We had days where the trolley drivers basically sit in the parking lot and we didn't move anybody at all. Since we are discussing trolley, I am sad to report that Lou Miata, who has been with us for the last 6 years as our trolley manager, is retiring here this month, the middle or the end of October. We are actively recruiting, trying to find a replacement for Lou. That is going to be some challenges. One, Lou has done such a great job as far as managing our trolley programs, but he's also a certified mechanic that does the majority of all of the maintenance on our trolleys. This year in February, South Carolina DOT changed the classification for a CDLP driver. Now an individual has to attend an actual certified class before they can receive a CDLP license. That's going to be a challenge to find someone that meets that classification now. But we are actively recruiting, trying to find those. And in addition, I think just finding our regular trolley drivers is going to be a challenge. Beaufort County School District is now paying the school bus drivers yearly versus seasonal. They received upwards to almost a $5 increase. So we don't have the need of our school bus drivers, which makes up the majority of our drivers today are of our school bus drivers. So it's going to be the trolley program. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that moving forward. We do have a committee that is scheduled to meet here next month to start discussing the upcoming trolley season and its schedules. Moving on to our CSA 360 implementation. Of the 5 modules, we have installed our dispatch module, the patrol module, as well as the gate module. They are all up and running successfully. We will be rolling out here in the coming months the rental management program, followed by our property owners module there shortly after. And as always, our number one priority is our recruitment and retention. We have made a pay increase that we're hoping that is going to help us with this recruitment, but I'm also been notified yesterday that so are several other gated communities are now raising their hourly fee. So recruitment and retention in our security department still remains our top priority. And that concludes my update.
Thank you, Toby. I just like to note and hope people who are watching this will remember, I came from the New Jersey, New York area where we locked our cars, our homes, our kids, everything. And then when we moved down south and found that most people not only don't lock their cars, they don't lock their homes. It's a much friendlier environment, I guess. But the result is I'm sure we have a lot of people who by tradition don't lock their cars. And when we find out that almost all of the burglaries into cars are unlocked cars, I want to remind our community that for better or worse, it's the sign of the times. If your car's unlocked, it is a potential for being burglarized. So please lock your cars as much as you lock your homes. In terms of guest passes, if we are finding people giving out their guest pass numbers, it can only lead to problems. So those are just as important as the password you use for your bank accounts in terms of giving them out. I urge people to do that. Thank you, Toby. Any other questions for Toby? Carolyn.
So Toby, what can we infer from the trolley ridership drop? I mean, are we inferring that there are fewer people here? There are clearly fewer people using the trolley, you know, because then that begs the question, do we need to provide the same level of service next year, especially considering that we have, you know, a personnel shortage? So do you think it's a one-off, or do you think there's a trend here, or what lesson do you think we might learn from this?
We actually had that actual discussion in several of our committee meetings. I can share with you from what the drivers are telling me. The drivers are telling me that we just don't have the population of the renters that are here. One of the stops that they drive in, and it's completely slipped my mind around, we actually pull into one of the condominium areas to pick up. They didn't see the population of riders there at all. We don't know if it's still COVID related, where people just don't want to ride next to someone on a public transportation. I have had conversations with several of the short-term rental management companies who say their numbers are down. But then I had the conversation with Beverly Cyril at her properties as well as Sea Pines Resort, and their numbers were up. So we don't really know. We had the additional riders thinking that we might have an increase in ridership this year, but they're just the population of riders just aren't there. And if you look around at the number of people on bicycles, we don't have a full number of exactly what the rentals on the bicycles are, but they're just, we don't really know what the answer to that is.
Terry Corbin.
Carolyn, just to further comment, Toby's report, because of the decrease in the ridership, all the stakeholders are going to get together, like Toby had mentioned. We're going to discuss what the future of the trolley program should look like, whether we continue with all the trolleys that we currently have because of the shortage of drivers and the ridership, or should we be looking at some 15-passenger vans or some other alternatives? And then, so we're going to kind of lay everything out and see where we stand and what opportunities that can present themselves to continue the trolley program at whatever degree we need to maintain it to meet the needs. Also, I will add that since the Sea Pines Resort started shuttling all their employees out of the Harbor Town area, which includes the golf links area, the gravel lot, and other areas that they are now shuttling all these employees, has opened up a lot of additional parking spots. So on top of the ridership being down, that probably goes to some of the percentage of ridership being decreased is because of more available parking that has been gained through the shuttle program. So, but we are going to discuss everything.
Thank you, Carrie. Jim Caskey?
Toby, are we seeing any increase in drop off? I live off of North Sea Pines Drive, and I haven't really noticed like I did in the past, people just stopping on the beach paths, dropping off and walking in from there, and then somebody taking the car back and probably riding a bike back or whatever they do. Are we surveying that and making sure we don't have that pattern emerge?
Yeah, we did receive quite a few calls through this past season where I think your beach marker 24 seems to be 24 and 25 seem to be a popular spot on South Sea Pines Drive. We didn't notice that it was causing huge traffic delays, but the patrol did encounter several through the season where they would just stop at the pass and drop someone off. We end up brought in a seasonal employee in front of the beach club, because what we were experiencing, the trolley was leaving lot 8, getting down to the beach club, only to find guests pulled into the trolley pull-off area in front of the beach club, dropping people off. So we had an attendant there that would put cones up when the trolley wasn't there to make sure that it was open when the trolley got there. But I don't know. We just, I mean, I guess the jury's still out of what the reasoning is of the low ridership.
Just a quick question. Is that a problem? Why is that a problem? It's already a nice turnaround drop off area. Why not allow property owners to pull in and drop off and retrieve people?
When there's cars parked there, that means the trolley stops in the roadway, which basically brings the entire lane to a complete stop. That's not what it was designed for, but I mean, if we wanted to turn it into that, I mean, I guess we could.
Times a day or whatever, and the trolley's not there, why not let property owners enjoy it? I think it's a nice little perk.
Don, let me suggest that that's a discussion that is appropriate and clearly appropriate for next season, and probably can be taken up both in this task force and in the committees that deal with the short-term rental and the safety and security as to how to deal with that. It's certainly something that's worth discussing. I appreciate that comment. Any other, Dave Pardue?
Yes, thank you. Toby, I was surprised with the 20,000 cars that are turned around. I don't know anything we can do about it, but is it mainly people who just get there and then decide not to pay the $9, or is there anything we can do about to maybe better educate people on that issue?
Well, we did put signage up in the roadway, right in the middle of the roadway prior to entering the Greenwood Gate, that I think helps a little bit. But it's a number of things. It's expired decals, it's their resort guests, their short-term rental guests that needed to have their pass or picked up. They get in there and they don't want to pay the $9, and we have to turn them around. We got to get a lot of calls about, okay, hey, these people that are turning around the Greenwood Gate is basically bringing everything to a stop. Well, in fact, it does slow the traffic down, which at certain times at the Greenwood Gate kind of is a help to us that allows those people to be able to exit out of Club Course, because the traffic is it's nonstop from the gate. So we're trying to, it's kind of a sword with both edges, so to speak. But it's a combination of everything, David, just of people not wanting to come, not going to pay the fee, or their rental their guest is actually at the Welcome Center.
David, I think we're all going to be working on signage to try and figure out a way to reduce the number of people who are going in the wrong lane. We're talking about a variety of different ways to get better signage, better words on the sign, so that it's clear that the left lane is only for people who already have their pass and/or property owner decals. Because when you think about a pass holder, maybe a short-term renter who says, "Well, I'm a pass holder," but they don't have a pass yet. But the other thing to keep in mind on the Club Course, there's no doubt that helps. But coming out of Club Course is not the worst thing in the world when you think of how far backed up it can be if 2 or 3 people are in the wrong lane. But we're going to work on all of that. It is a high priority for Sam and Toby and I to be working on figuring out ways to improve access in without having all these turnarounds. Any other questions for Toby? And thank you, Toby. We'll move then on to the financial report. Ms. Shanahan, you're back on.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to start with the balance sheet. There's really nothing to report on the assets. On our current liabilities, the one item I did want to point out is the retainage payable of $206,000. That is the retainage that we are still holding for the work that's being done on Pines Drive. Coming down to the fund balances, the one of significance is the Infrastructure Improvements Fund. As you know, the board has elected to go ahead and start spending those funds, even though we, as of today, we have been unable to collect them. So we've spent just a little shy of $2.5 million, and now we're going to start paying ourselves back for that. The next statement is just a detail of those different fund balances and how they change and what's prompting those changes. I'm going to move over to the income statement. The income statement, we are showing a positive result of almost 2.8 million through July. And that is doing better than we had budgeted, a deficit of 3 million. And most of that deficit is because of the projects, the major projects down on Pines Drive that we budget them, but they have not been completed yet. Something of note from budget to actual on the revenues is the daily gate passes are down slightly. In August and September, they have caught back up a little bit, but it's interesting that they are down, as well as the short-term rental is down just a little bit. But what's interesting is our annual permit revenue is up significantly. So I guess all that construction, a lot of these contractors are electing to buy an annual decal versus paying $10 per day. And finally, for the budgeted operating expenditures, we show actual versus budget. You'll notice a big overage on the maintenance operations. And as Jared mentioned earlier, most of that is due to tree work, which obviously is unavoidable. We have to fix it. And finally, as everyone is, we have a change in market value of investments. We have a loss just over $416,000, and that's just an unrealized loss. And we all hope that that's going to come back up.
Emphasize unrealized.
Unrealized, that's correct.
Paper.
It's a loss on paper, that's correct. Does anyone have any questions? If not, I'll just need a motion to accept these financial statements.
So it's resolution 9A, acceptance financial statements year to date, July 31, 2022, resolved the Pines Community Service Associates Board of Directors as recommended by the Finance Committee accepts the financial statements year to date, July 31, 2022 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Borghese. Is there a second? Mr. Ellis, all in favor, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed? Any further questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the amendment to the budget. Thank you. That passes.
All right, Sam, I'm going to ask you to start this one off for us.
I'll do my best. Credit where credit is due to start with. Russell Fredericks, we discussed earlier, has done a great job with North Pines Drive, and we have done value engineering on that project, as well as just make field changes as necessary to make the project as practical as possible while maintaining the highest quality. So we think by the end of the project, that we're going to have some dollars that will carry over out of that project, and that we're recommending that we move some of those dollars, as well as any additional dollar that we have in budget that we're not going to spend on the capital side this year, as necessary to amend the budget for $340,000 to go towards paving, milling and paving the Greenwood Drive entrance from Club Course back to Pine Circle. For those of you that are here in the community and coming in and out of that roadway, you can see the level of deterioration that's gone on. Unfortunately, we hope to do this in next year's budget, but I think where we are now with the quality and failure of the road in certain places, and with the potholing that's gone on, that we need to go ahead and do this in this year's budget and do it hopefully by the end of the third quarter of this year will be our recommendation if we can get the work scheduled, but no later than the end of the year. And you would see, what you would see is you would see the road milled and repaved from Seapine Circle through Club Course, and then we would put additional striping and signage down on the roadway and arrows and those kind of things. And that should cover us for 2 to 3 years as we determine what really needs to happen on Greenwood Drive for significant structural changes that we've been talking about as we finalize what that needs to look like in the coming year. So that's the recommendation of the board. We're asking the board to amend the budget for $340,000 to allow us to pave Greenwood Drive from Seapine Circle to Club Course, mill and pave Seapine Circle to Club Course. I will note all this work will be done at night. So we did look at this last year. It was a little cheaper last year, quite honestly, because the price of commodities were down then. But we've also made the determination that we're going to have to do all this work at night because we don't want anything. We can't do the work during the day. So there is a bit of a premium associated with this cost to do that will be done in the evenings with traffic control and all those things. So, but during the busy period of the gates will be open, fully open.
Any questions for Sam on this? Sam, I have one. I know that you have been working with the town and presumably at some point there'll have to be DOT on trying to fix the access in and out of that portion, which does have some real major traffic concerns, including we're told by at least one property owner there's been a number of accidents there, which is not surprising. Too many blind spots. If we complete this, how does that work into what I think we've discussed as your long-term plans for trying to rejigger that road so that it's safe?
Well, this is really just will carry us through to we're ready to work with, take it to town and South Carolina Department of Transportation. But the goal being to realign the road and the turning movements in a way that's safer than they are now. And then, part of what the recommendation would be to the community and to the board would be from a certain point, throwing a spot out in front of the Welcome Center to Seapine Circle, allow the town and SCDOT to take over that facility because that truly is a public piece of the road. And I think there should be some public responsibility and maintenance associated with it moving ahead because that road serves the public shopping center. It serves Harris Teeter, Executive Park. It's not primarily a Seapines road as maybe it was at one time. And so, CSA inherited that roadway in 1988. Things have changed significantly since then. And the town has accepted other pieces of private roads that are really public roads in the past. So as we look to all of Seapine Circle, that will be part of what we take to the community. But the key for us is figuring out the alignment in the future and quite honestly how to fund it, the rebuilding of the gates coming into the community and what that will need to look like. So this is just a step to get us to where we can really have those conversations with the town but also make it interest what it needs to be coming into the community.
Good. And I applaud Sam for all the effort he's put into that, including maintaining great relationships with the town. Steve Birdwell?
Yes, Sam, but this part of the road actually, we all know needs to be done. A little more about the timing. You said possibly by the end of the third quarter, but we're about to end the quarter this week. So I'd like to know just a little more about the timing and how long.
I'm sorry, Steve. You're exactly right in my head. We start talking about this in August with the finance committee, and so that's why. So it will be sometime in obviously the fourth quarter.
How long do you think that it'll take to complete?
Once they get the equipment on site, Steve, it should go fairly quickly because they're doing it at night, and I would hopefully no more than a week.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because we're just talking about milling from Seapines Drive to Club Course through the gates, and then scheduling the asphalt to come down. Probably the key will be the closest asphalt plant is y'all are very aware is 40 miles away, and scheduling when that plant will be up and available to run in the evenings, so that the dump trucks that bring the asphalt to the paving machines can be, all that has to be coordinated. So that will be the key. We'll know when we can get the asphalt plant running at night so that the dump trucks can be scheduled to bring it to the pavers and the asphalt machine. More to come on that. If this is approved, we'll move ahead with Blythe. Blythe, our contractor, is doing the North Sea Pines Drive project. It's been great to work with. And we'll have a full schedule to communicate to the board and the community in the coming weeks.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move the amendment budget, which is resolution 9B, to approve the amendment to budget 2022 in the amount of $340,000 to cover the cost of the mill and repave at Greenwood Drive from Sea Pine Circle to Club Course Drive. Is there a second? Mr. Borghese. So moved. So we'll, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Seeing none, the resolution passes.
I did want to thank Russell again for North Sea Pines Drive. And if you haven't enjoyed looking at Russell today, because when North Sea Pines Drive starts and this starts, Russell will be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The sleeping bag goes where? Okay,
standing up.
Moving on to committee reports. Before we start the other committee reports, under the bylaws, I, as chairman, have the authority to create ad hoc committees with the board's approval. Over the last several years, we've been blessed with having former retired lawyers who are not South Carolina lawyers who have provided advice to Sam when matters of legal consequence come up. I think it's time to actually create a legal committee, which would include any members of the board who were licensed practitioners, but not necessarily in South Carolina. And we would then be in a position also to add potentially members of the public who are also former lawyers who can assist Sam as he has questions about contracts or litigation. Obviously, they wouldn't be considered, they wouldn't be providing legal advice, they wouldn't be licensed to do so, but it would help also in conversations with Ned and our outside counsel. So I'd like to, the board's approval to create that committee, and we'll then populate it as appropriate over time. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, raise your hands if you approve my authority to create that committee. So thank you, that passes. We'll move on then to existing committee reports. I urge those committee chairs to be concise, as we've heard a lot from our senior directors. Dave Borghese, you're first.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. The Finance Committee did meet a week ago. Victoria covered just about everything that transpired at that meeting. The only additional issue is that we have appointed a subcommittee for investments, and that's 5 members of our Finance Committee, and those individuals will be identified in our minutes. That's my report. Thank you.
Any questions for Dave on the Finance Committee? Hearing none, we'll go to Carrie Corbett.
Thank you. Well, most of my report has already been covered between Victoria, Toby, and Sam, but I will comment that on the CSA 360, there will be a QR code on the back of that gate pass that will provide visitors with the Sea Pines rules and regulations as well as wildlife information. That has been a comment that has come up at different times as far as what's going to be available on that. Also, with regard to, Sam gave an update on Sea Pines Circle and Palmer Bay and all that. So that's underway, but there's a lot of discussion going on with the 278 bridges. So that's kind of taking a little bit of the precedent of dealing with that, but Sam's on top of working with the town officials and others on that. And then our ridership that we'll have a meeting on, and that'll be in the next coming weeks. Then we do have today a resolution 12D to vote on that affects 6 sections of the gate entry policy. These 6 sections really are to clarify the gate entry policy and really what is currently being administered through Sea Pines Carrier.
Under section 12C, it does correct. That's okay. It's quite lengthy. I'm not going to read it. For those members of the public who are interested, we did publish on Sea Pines Living the agenda and the resolutions are available there. They'll also be available once these are passed in the gate entry policy But as Carrie has noted, these are clarifying, there's no significant change. It's just a matter of putting into words that which has been the practice. So I'll ask for a motion to approve resolution 12C as listed in our resolutions and in our agenda. Carrie, you're making that motion. I'll second it. Any discussion of any of these? Seeing none, I'll move. I'm sorry, Steve.
I just wanted to ask a question about the commercial fees. There's a couple of those have been increased by 50%. How's the new fees compare to other communities?
Well, the new fees have not yet gone into effect. I expect they will go into effect in the next several weeks. We're still waiting approvals, but necessary approvals, which I'm sure we will be getting soon. But when we adopted them, they're all at or near the median of all other communities. We have been the lowest by far on almost all levels. This will move us into at or near the median. There may be one or two where we are equal to others at the high end, but there are none where we are above any, and in most cases we remain below in the middle. That's correct. Any other questions? If not, I'll move the question. All in favor of resolution 12C? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the resolution passes. Thank you, Terry. Thank you. Jim Caskey on governance. I know Amanda's given part of the report. Do we have additional? Jim Caskey, unmute. Unmute.
Okay. The first thing was we have the resolution 12E in our packet, allowing us to advance the minutes by simple majority on the email so we can post them more quickly. So I would still move the approval of the 12E posting of minutes following simple majority approval by email.
And as background, before the governance committee changed the rule, suggested changing the rule to allow for email ratification and posting, it used to be months before the minutes were posted. We are still finding that there's a delay. I do want to stress, because I know this comes up occasionally, that most of the committee discussions are confidential for reasons. One is because the committees are not authorized to act for the board, and therefore any action by the committee is not official until the board actually takes it upon itself. And second, because we do have members of the public who are not board members, we want them to speak freely their views without having to be concerned that the minutes describe at some length what was discussed. If it comes to the board, it becomes a board action. So the minutes themselves are fairly pure. And those who believe that reading the minutes are going to get a lengthy discussion on what the board's thinking, I think have been misled. So it's important to get them on to get them up to date. But I want to stress that the benefit of having non-board members of the public on these committees is we do get a lot of public input from the public as we take actions, but the committees themselves are not authorized to act, and therefore the minutes will not reflect anything official other than very brief discussions of the issues. With that in mind, it's still better to get them on the public website sooner than later. So the governance committee recommends that. If the majority approves, they are considered approved. Is there any further discussion of that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of resolution 12E? Any opposed? Seeing none, that resolution passes. Thank you, Jim.
And just one other thing governance is working on is, as Amanda reported, we're working through a new update in our thinking and the philosophical backdrop of our vision and mission. And the goal there, and the committee's been really robust in its dialogue about it, is to really start to develop this concept of the board coming together and acting in the common good. So I'll look forward in a few months to be able to walk the board through recommended language and approaches about our vision and mission, and defining CSA and the goalposts of CSA, because CSA is not Sea Pines. It's an operating organization that is charged with quality and safety and infrastructure management. So some good work forthcoming.
Thank you, Jim. Turning to Mr. Thompson, Greg Thompson, Land Use Management.
Thank you, Larry. Make this brief, given the time. We've had a very active committee this year. We met last week. We've been reviewing the data from the system that Ryan uses to record violations and actions as the land use monitor, primarily to see what we can learn, see if there's trends that might lead to either a review of some of the regulation or increased communication to property owners about how to better comply. We've also completed work on roadside barriers. If you drive around the community, you will see that folks have put everything from railroad ties to big rocks to you name it, to protect their lawns, driveways, etc., from heavy trucks and people parking where they shouldn't park. So we have got a draft of a new rule and some ideas on implementation, and we'd like to bring that forward at our next board meeting. That completes my report.
Any questions for Greg? Seeing none, thank you, Greg. We'll move on to Mr. Sharp, Tom. And maintenance.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Larry. Russell and Jared did a fine job of explaining their work. They are a pleasure to work with, by the way. The committee, I just want to make one mention now that we're getting a clearer picture of the infrastructure funding and future funding stream, that we have been working very hard to establish a plan, 10-year plan. Now we're actually a couple of years into that plan, but excellent work has been done to look at all of the projects, the roadways, the pathways, drainage, and lagoons in order to line them up and set a priority for the next few years. And so we'll be coming out with that in the near future, now that we have a good picture of the established funding. But aside from that, the committee is working, and we're pleased to have Russell and Jared's efforts, and Amanda, I think, does a fine job in communicating our infrastructure needs and progress. So thank you to the staff. Does a fine job. That's it.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Johnson, Safety and Security and Transportation.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Our committee met on September the 6th, and Toby basically covered everything that we did. I would just like to ask the community going forward to be or to remember Toby's plea for additional resources so we can stay competitive or become competitive in attracting employees that are much needed right now. And as our revenue requests go to the community, that's the reason why we're there pushing so hard. Our next meeting, Mr. Chairman, is October 25th. That's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Bill on safety and security? Seeing none, we'll move on to Charlie Minor, the Forest Preserve Foundation Advisory Board.
Thank you, Larry. 6 years ago, Hurricane Matthew totally transformed the forest preserve by knocking down literally thousands and thousands of trees. With the cleanup process that we were able to implement, we have opened up large areas within the forest preserve for potential use by the community. Under the leadership of John Parsons, we put together a master plan for the forest preserve. It's been reviewed extensively by the committee and by the resort. We are now scheduling board meeting or board visits to the forest preserve to take a look at the changes that have occurred and what the potential might be for the future. So those are scheduled for October. We should have a recommendation coming back to the November board meeting. That's my report.
Thank you, Charlie. And the Forest Preserve Advisory Committee proposed master plan is a terrific document, and the members of the Foundation Board of Trustees will take it very seriously. Any questions for Charlie? Seeing none, we'll move on then to Mr. Ellis and short-term rental.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think everything that we discussed and handled have been covered very well by Toby and Victoria. I would only be wasting time to repeat what they said, so in the interest of time, that's, concludes my remarks concerning our committee. We did hold a committee meeting in September, and we'll have another one coming up shortly. Thank you.
Any questions for David? We'll then turn to David Pardue for our final report on strategic plan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Strategic Planning Committee met, and then in September, I had a very active discussion. A number of people on our committee would like to would like aspirational things that are perhaps outside the scope of CSA. And as Jim Caskey has mentioned, CSA is not really the whole community. It's really a more of a utility. So at our next meeting in October, I think we're going to be finalizing some ways that perhaps we could be more of a facilitator. Perhaps we may be recommending to the board and to the management that we try to be a facilitator in some issues that would broaden it to the more of the aspirational issues, but it's still in discussion. So stay tuned for perhaps the next board meeting. That concludes my report.
Any questions for David Pardue? Seeing none, then we will finish that. That's our last committee report. Our next item is the unfinished business, the update on the CPINE CSA revenue source proposal. I think we've heard in the various committees, land use management needs additional resources. Clearly security does. It's worth noting that Greg mentioned in the number of reports that were handled by the LUM for violations, and then Toby added another group of violations because we have to end security out when it's actually a land use management violation. And so we're hiring additional land use monitors who can handle the work when our one guy goes home. This is the only works days, and that should relieve some of the work from the security. But at the end of the day, we are short staffed, and throughout our staff at CSA, we are finding enormous pressure on wages. I think it's a national, it's a regional, it's a local issue. Wages are going up, and the number of people available is going down. So we will continue to look at new revenue sources. The revenue task force will contain a number of proposals. We are continuing to work with council to make sure that whatever we do satisfies the requirements of the South Carolina Nonprofit Act and our covenants. And we will continue to aggressively look for new resources, because we can't maintain this community at the high level of standards that it wants to be, maintain our property values at the high levels that it wants to be on a fully occupied basis without additional personnel and resources to do so. So it's an ongoing situation. With that, I'll turn to Mr. Johnson on the Board of Directors nominating committee results. Amanda has done it, but I think it's already reported on who's running, correct?
Right. Yes, Mr. Chairman, the committee, which consisted of myself, along with board members Rich Spear and Greg Thompson, met and interviewed the candidates on August the 11th. I would say that we are extremely fortunate in Sea Pines to have such qualified people willing to serve. We have put forward all the candidates that we interviewed as very qualified to be board members, and we look forward to the election.
Terrific. And a reminder, the ballots will go out on November 1 and must be returned by December 1. And we will have a Meet the Candidates forum in October, and it's a great opportunity to hear what the candidates stand for. It's great that we had as many as 5 people run. I'm disappointed with all the social media chatter that more people who have ideas about how Sea Pines should be run chose not to enter the fray, but hopefully they'll get involved in committees. Next item is the Class B nominating process. Jim, Don, you want to take that? Or Don?
I'll let Don take that. Don, you good? Oh, maybe not. Oh, here we go.
There, Don. Me, looks like it's trying. Unmute, Don.
Yeah,
Unmute.
unmute, Don.
Yeah, Jim, I'm actually driving. I'm about to go to a doctor's appointment. If you could take that, Jim, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, the opening position, as we had talked about before, was for Mark King. That's being advanced and nominated, so I think the commercial roster will be complete with that move.
Okay, so Mark King has been nominated to run for the single seat that's open for re-election. Congratulations, Don. Hopefully you'll get enough votes. Lastly, we have the committee meeting schedule for 2023. I want to note that this is the tentative schedule that's been proposed. It's consistent with what we've done in the past, but obviously each new chairman of the board and each new committee chair will have the ability to, once they're appointed, to determine whether that suits their own schedule. So I'd like a motion to approve the meeting schedule as you see in your packet. Is there a motion to approve that? Mr. Corbett, a second. Mr. Sharp, any discussion on that meeting schedule so far? Hearing none, that's approved. We then have 3 encroachment agreements that have been sent around over the course of the last several months and ratified through email or approved through email. I'd like a motion to ratify the approvals of the Baynard Cove Lot F, Baynard Cove Lot 29, and Twin Pines Lot 29. Take them as a group. Is there any discussion of any of them? Seeing none, I'll move to approve all 3. Is there a second? Mr. Corbett, all in favor, raise your hands, please. Opposed, seeing none, those are approved. Is there any other business to come before the meeting? Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned and we will move to the questions and answers. Amanda, if you have any more that are coming before, we'll take those. Just get to where you are on my screen. Good. We have 2 questions, which I'm not going to read, but the questions are, how much have we spent in legal fees on the litigation style buildings versus CSA? And the answer, we don't discuss the amount of legal fees that are involved in any litigation. Sadly, we do have a number of litigation, but the amount of fees we don't discuss. So I appreciate your interest in the question, but that is not a matter that we will be discussing in public. We've also have a question as to the feasibility of creating a dog park in Sea Pines from Ms. Adrian White. Sam, you want to discuss that?
I think the strategic planning committee met and discussed that, and there is some desire to do it. But this time, the committee is decided to push that down the road. I think that's where we've left that. I'm happy for a committee member to change it if anybody's recollection is different than mine.
Dave Parker is not here, but so at this point in time, that will be at best will continue. I presume if Ms. White and others wanted to be part of the strategic planning group.
It would be that, or it really boils down to 2 things. It's, well, a number of things, but yes, we have to have added support in the sense of like other things, it's competing for space and resources and all those things.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Ms. White. John Gottlieb has sent questions to the board concerning the number of accidents that he's identified on the Greenwood Drive portion of Greenwood Drive outside the gate between the circle and the gate. As he notes, there have been a number of them. As we've noted, he notes 238 in the past 3 years, and has asked what we can do about that. Sam, I know we've discussed this, and and it's a complex problem. You want to continue to discuss the complexity of it?
All I can add to what we've already talked about is that as we look to the future and how we realign the gates in Greenwood Drive and potentially change some of those turning movements, I think it will certainly help, but we're not in a position to do that currently because of the nature of the access, the legal access that the current folks, private property owners have coming off of Greenwood Drive. So, but as we move through this with the town and we reorganize and rebuild the gates, there will be an opportunity to correct or improve Greenwood Drive coming through from Seapine Circle through the gates. I do believe the form we got there from Mr. Gottlieb that was for every accident that had occurred on Greenwood Drive, not just that section that we're looking at. But we're going through those, and we'll be getting back to them. And happy to sit down with him face to face in person if you like.
Are we talking about outside the gate, between the circle and the gate?
Between the circle and the gate.
Okay.
Yes.
And obviously, there's a number of parties involved in those discussions, since a number of commercial enterprises rely on some of those cuts for access to their businesses, and we will need to. It's a complex problem. Again, we have a couple of questions about the litigation called Bill Jinks individually and as trustee of the Jinks Heritage Trust versus CSA. Ms. Jinks has exercised her rights to, as we all individuals have the right to do, to sue, to have a question of our authority to hold the referendum and collect the money. She's exercised her rights to appeal. What is in her mind is not a matter for CSA to speculate about, and we will simply continue to fight the case that based on the advice we had and the good faith efforts we made and the community's overwhelming support to pursue our rights to hold the referendum, call the referendum, hold the referendum, and collect the money. And that's really all we can say about that case. A question from Lisa Nevitt: what is being considered to prevent battery-operated electronic bikes from being ridden in Seapines? She has two questions, but that's the first one. The question of e-bikes in Seapines is a complex one. The town allows them outside. Many people are using them. We are seeing more and more, just much as technology is moving forward, and the size of the bikes and the size of the motors is becoming harder and harder to detect. On the other hand, Seapines presents some unique challenges. Our bike paths go through residential areas in addition to our main roads. They are in many areas narrow and curved with a lot of blind spots. And so safety on our bike paths has got to be and is our primary focus. We continue to consider ways that we might be able to authorize some group of e-bikes on our paths, but it is a matter that will take some time to make sure that what we do will not jeopardize the safety of other bikers and walkers on our bike paths. And so all I can tell Ms. Nevitt is that we are working we currently prevent them, and the rules are clear. It's very difficult to enforce, but when our security officers do happen to see an e-bike, they deal with them. But we are working to find a way to accommodate perhaps the technology that may be hard to stop, and to enforce rules, to find a way to develop rules that are enforceable. The second question that she raises are there plans to put a bike pathway between the Seapines Welcome Center and the public shopping center? Sam?
Yeah, so that is one of the projects that Russell's working on, is trying to add a leisure path from the gate trail all the way to the public shopping center. He's been in contact with Publix about that and working with the resort about potential routing. And the goal would be to really the biggest challenge that the resort's next to work with. Publix is finally becoming engaged. The biggest challenge is making sure that we've gotten enough right of way between Greenwood Drive and there's a very large drainage ditch there that separates the old gallery shop site and the welcome center. And so making sure that we can navigate that without having to do some type of bridge or something of that nature is what we're working on right now. But I think you will see a trail, a path there, a leisure path there, so we can keep folks off the road that want to go to Publix using their bike.
It's in the budget. It's budgeted, so
There we go.
it's on the radar screen.
Okay, need to go down. The question from Doug Shu, despite new short-term rental fees, increased gate fees, referendum infrastructure fees, and ongoing fees, there continues to be talk for more revenue. Does the board have a 3 to 5 year projection of revenue by source and expense by category, share with the community? Let's also see the assumption behind the numbers. Perhaps the need isn't as great as the continuing call for more. I can tell you, I can assure you that as we move forward, we have in fact tried to project to the best we can the anticipated expenses and our revenues for on operations, making reasonable assumptions about how much we can increase the annual assessment, show a significant shortfall. Now, with the rental registration fee in place, we will be much better off. We've been, I hate to say lucky because it's really not good luck, but we have in fact found money that we would have spent on security officers that we don't have to be able to increase the salaries to those that we do have. But that's really robbing Peter to pay Paul, because we do need the extra security. We need to fill our security force at the higher salary levels, plus the extra. So on an ongoing basis, we can project out, and what appears to be a surplus is really just a failure to be able to hire. But Sam, maybe to give an example, our assessment, will probably go up this year roughly 8.5 to 9% based on current projections. Sam, what do we have? How much do we have to raise our salaries for our security officers from what it was to what we now have?
30-35% to be competitive at the.
To be competitive, and we have to be ultra competitive because we are the last place that people need to get to. We're raising salaries 35%. So, well, can I tell you, we have exact numbers. We do project. We have an incredibly good finance department, but there's no doubt in my mind, having been chairman now for a number of years, and with the expectation that this will continue, that we are starting to have shortfalls and we need additional revenue.
Well, and the only thing I would add to that, Larry, is in addition to the finance department, and Victoria and her team does a great job, everything that we do as it relates to finances, and this goes back to committees, we take it through the finance committee, which is made up of a group of property owners who have hundreds of years of experience in the world of finance, and they grill us to a T on what we're doing and why we're doing, our projections and where we are. And that's part of the benefit of having such a well-rounded and well-versed group of folks. So when we bring something to the board of directors and the community, it hasn't just been Sam and Victoria sitting around throwing the dice open for the best. We've gone through a level of due diligence with it. It's great. It makes what we take to this board and this community top notch. And so it's not always fun for Victoria and myself, but it's always effective.
And I will add only that when we have built up, we have built up some level of reserves, but those reserves are in the 30 to 40% of what might be required, recognizing that if we were to have a major hurricane, hopefully not, which we may have, hopefully not this weekend, but something even close to Matthew, the amount of funds that were spent, we were lucky enough to get most of it back from FEMA, but there's no guarantee on any of that. That reserve is necessary to protect this community from the worst case of hurricanes. So not only, we can't keep diving into that reserve and taking it to pay, again, robbing Peter to pay Paul. But I don't think if you just look at the inflationary pressures and the lack of the resources that we still don't have, that this board is very comfortable with the benefit of an incredibly strong staff and committee, that we do need additional revenue. Next is from Fritz Smith. What is the short-term rental parking policy? And how does the town policy impact parking? Sam?
Short-term renters are required, their vehicles are required to be parked on a hardscape surfaces at the property, and then if they can't accommodate that, they may go to park in lot 1 with their overflow parking, and that's our policy. And in the town's, I don't think the town's policy is any stricter than that. So I don't think necessarily the town's policy will still apply, but if they meet our policy, I believe they will meet the town's policy.
Thank you. Sam? Next is from Alex Cruden. Is the CSA council at this stage the same one who advised CSA when it prepared the original referendum? And the answer to that question is we are using not only the original council, who we have great faith in, Walter Nestor at Walker Forma, but we are using his litigation team which is out of Columbia. And they also felt very strongly that we had acted appropriately. Obviously, the judge, as judges can disagree, but they never questioned the good faith the advice that we gave or the good faith actions that we took. And I think if you were to read the record and the briefs that we put together, we felt then and we continue to feel very strongly that we were on the right side of the issue. Although we were willing to accept Judge Norton's position, we will cross appeal and continue to take those positions with the Court of Appeals in a new review. Then the second question is that the council handling the CSA appeal have substantial experience in dealing with the Federal Court of Appeals? And the answer is I'm very comfortable, yes, that they do, as does our other outside counsel that we've been working with on fees and the fee structure, who also has substantial Court of Appeals experience. Thank you, Alex, for that. And then final question that I have in front of me so far is from David May. I imagine the short-term rentals have no idea the rules. How do we distribute the rules? Sam?
Amanda communicates those to the short-term rental, to our short-term rental program on a regular basis with direct emails. We also send them out on our weekly emails, and then we'll certainly be doing even more than that as we approach the short-term rental registration program. I think you'll see us moving into after the October, the October season. We'll have the program itself laid out in a way that's very concise and very clear as to what the expectations are of the short-term rental property owners. And this will be in addition to what the town of Hilton Head is doing. So there's really two programs running parallel. Remember, and ours is focused on managing what we have to deal with in here. The town, we're waiting to see how the two programs are going to work together. But I think we're actually further along with ours. And what we do in regards to short-term rentals, we certainly are than the town is.
And is the new pass have a barcode that will give the renters the rules?
It will have a QR code that has all the rules associated with community safety, security, rentals, all of those things, depending on what you're there and what you're there for.
And I might add, every person who is in a short-term rental is renting a home that is owned by a residential property owner or a commercial property owner, as the case may be. And so it isn't just the responsibility of CSA and a short-term renter to know what the rules are. It's the responsibility of our residential property owners to make sure that the people who are using their house, whether it's their family, themselves, or short-term renters, to know the rules. I don't think it's fair, although I know we complain about our short-term renters, to only blame the short-term renters when they are in a house that is owned by a residential property owner and they don't know the rules. Your neighbors are as responsible for keeping your neighborhood safe and without violations as a short-term renter is. So I would urge our residential property owners who are renting to short-term renters to remember that they should know the rules and they should be just as interested in making sure their short-term renters do as well, and take the responsibility to make sure that the community maintains itself at a high level of quality. Because if they choose to sell that property, then the value of that property can only go up if everyone lives by our short-term rental rules. Amanda, that's the last I have had 11. Are there others that you've received?
I do have some additional questions, Larry. I'm happy to bring those. The next question comes from Brad Peppel. The question is related to assessments. We have been property owners for less than a year. We have heard about the assessments, but are not aware of the total number of assessments. Is it 2 years of $600 each year, or have additional years been approved at this time?
Yes, the Fifth Amendment, which we expect to record next week, provides for $600 a year. As of 2022, CPI'd up on the appropriate CPI each year with no time limitation on it. So it will continue until such time as a future board decides not to collect it in any given year. But it will be collected every year unless the board decides not to.
Thank you, Larry. A few more follow-up questions from property owner David May. His first follow-up question: for a 5+ bedroom home that rents for 2 months, how much is the new rental fee? He goes on to say, is it a flat $1,000 for the year or a proportioned amount to actual days that are rented, like the IRS Schedule Schedule E?
Victoria, you want to answer? I can go ahead and answer.
Go ahead. No, it's a flat $1,000 fee for the year. And whether you rent your home for 1 night or 365 nights, that is what the fee is.
Thank you, Victoria. The next question from Mr. May: besides combining ads to find who rents, why not meet with local property management firms to learn which properties they rent to collect the new fees directly, if possible? Since we have the fee, let's make sure it is fairly applied.
I believe, Victoria, I'll let you answer how we come to the numbers, but I believe we do exactly that. We don't just look for ads. We do that to some of them.
Our primary contact is actually directly with the property owners
Directly.
that are part of our room registration already through the gate program, and then also with all of the major property management companies. And so we do that directly, and then but there are property owners that rent in C-Pines that do not choose to participate in the short-term rental gate program or use property managers. And so that's where we have to try and find those folks. They will be required under the Townsend Code, whether they have 1 rental property or 100 to have a town business license. So they will have some type of record that they are renting in C-Pines moving ahead.
Thank you. Next question.
And the final question that we have today, also from Mr. David May: is there a technology committee or team? How does new technology get selected and applied? Might be an opportunity to save on salary and increasing employee counts, is what Mr. May has asked.
We have a one employee dedicated to technology. He's our information manager. We're very lean when it comes to employees on technology, so there's really not a whole lot of savings there. But we do work on occasion with technology task force when we have a technology-based issue. Any task force would, in my opinion, need to come out from under the finance committee as part of the finance committee moving ahead, because our technology manager works for Victoria Shanahan.
But we do use outside consultants when we have a project.
That's correct.
And that is the last question we have, Larry.
Great. Well, thank you for all the folks who have been watching the video and stayed with us. Thank you for all those who may watch it in the future and enjoy the entire 2 hours. And thank you to the board for sitting through and for the excellent participation we had today. With that, this meeting is adjourned.